Good Sunday morning, everybody. It is super early here. Sunday morning at 22nd Street Landing in beautiful San Pedro, California. And the reason I'm here so early is because we're getting ready for our Patreon Fiesta down here. Patreon members are the life's blood of Friedman Adventures. And today, well, we're going to have a nice little luncheon at 12 noon. We're going to have pulled pork sandwiches, some sides. We're going to have all kinds of guests down here that you can mingle with and meet and talk fishing with. Captains from the boats, the Independence is here, the Amigo is here, Pursuit. All the guys are going to come up and have lunch with you also. So you'll be able to meet them. And of course, Danny Cadota and Brian Wynn and so many other great folks will be here in just a little while. Hey, you know what time it is? You know what? They don't have the coffee made. I got to fake it. It's time for, I'm not going to fake it, the morning briefing. Good morning, everybody. I hope you're having a good sip of coffee. I'm going to have some with you at 12 noon, maybe, or I'll have some Propel or something like that. But it's really good to be with you. Can't wait to see all of our Patreon members a little bit later here in the day as we are getting ready to rock and roll. And we've got a big show here this morning for you because there's a lot to talk about. I mean, we've got Coronado Island Yellowtail to talk about, or lack of. We've got Collinette Yellowtail. We've also got to talk about Albacore because, man, the rumors are flying everywhere. I had so many messages. Man, I've heard the Albacore are biting out of Ensenada, and I was thinking, you know, even if this is going to be an Albacore year, this is really early for Albacore to be showing up in high 50-degree water. So I've heard that, but I've heard some other stuff that is confirmed, and we'll get into that. And, of course, that 336-pound yellowfin tuna. Roy Rose running the Royal Polaris. A beautiful catch indeed down there on the long range, and there's been a lot going on. Just a reminder to you all that we do have that Patreon luncheon today at 12 noon. If you become a Patreon member today, just show up and we'll have a really good time. I guarantee you that. And once again, also, don't forget April the 15th, we'll be at Santa Ana River Lakes. And Davo is going to supply us with some rods and reels for trout. And the guys from the Rod and Reel Club, the Redondo Rod and Gun Club, pardon me. My friend Chuck Zimmer, who's making the pulled pork sandwiches today, is the president of that esteemed club. And he's going to be there with all his guys, Friedman Adventures guys, and we'll be tutoring the fine art of trout fishing. And I think you will thoroughly enjoy it. So that should be a lot of fun. All right, let's jump into the Albacore thing. There's rumors swirling all around Ensenada. I heard it from a couple of different sources. Unconfirmed, however. And we get these kinds of rumors every single year when there is the possibility of Albacore. And by that I mean there were some years where it's just completely out of the question, especially when you have really hot water, El Nino type conditions. You're not going to catch any Albacore to speak of. And that was certainly the case for a good part of the year. Now, we do have an El Nino brewing down around the equator, which is supposed to have its effect on SoCal in the summer. So that leaves a window in the spring and early summer for Albacore to bite. Now the question is the water cool enough and is there feed? Mike McDaniels, in a recent interview we did with him, he's the great captain of the Sea Adventure 80 out of H&M Landing in San Diego. Mike pointed to two things. Cooler water, that's what Albacore like. 63.5 is the perfect water temp for Albacore. You can get a little cooler than that, a little warmer than that, but that 63.5 was always the temp we were kind of looking for to get a jig strike on Albie and go into a stop. And that certainly is going to be the case again this year. Mike said that water and, of course, food. And the favorite food for Albie is going to be anchovy. There seems to be more of it around. Is there enough to get an Albacore bite? I don't know. And with these Albacore rumors swirling around, it's pretty interesting. Now, Tommy Holland, retired captain, really has his finger on the pulse of Albacore, and he tells me that longliners west of Guadalupe Island are catching good amounts of Albacore. Man, that is a real good and significant sign for Albacore in Southern California. In fact, Tommy is going out on a limb and saying we're going to catch Albacore. I don't know how many, but there's going to be Albacore this year. He also talks about fish being caught on the urban bank, which is another very popular area where Albie will show up before they move into SoCal. Sometimes they don't. They'll show up on the urban and be north of us. But many times that is also a gateway area where they flood in here to SoCal. Now, I mean, you have to get the water temp right. You have to have the bait. And about the earliest I remember albacore was like April, May. So we're a little bit on the early side. I mean, if you're going to start rumors about albacore, you're best to start them off around, April or May. And remember, in years gone by, it was always the 4th of July. You celebrate the 4th of July, offshore you go. This is before you could see water temperatures and all that stuff. And you go out and start jigging around some traditional areas, 60 Mile Bank, dumping grounds, Inner Bank off Ensenada, Butterfly Bank, any one of those, and see who could come up with some algae. And more times than not, somebody would find them and the fleet would get on top of it. So there's a little bit going on, but we still have unconfirmed, nothing confirmed is what I should say. No albacore that we have been able to figure out have been taken. Bluefin tuna, while we're on the subject, we might as well talk a little bit about that. Same thing I've heard rumors about. There's bluefin tuna at Catalina Island and blah, 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 blah. But so far, here's the reality of the situation. The Polaris Supreme had to go over 150 miles to get 18 bluefin tuna. That's how far they went. And the Pegasus, and those guys are hard fishermen, they were on a day-and-a-half trip. They could fish pretty darn far, well over 100 miles. They scoured the area, and they came up with a goose egg. And that's just because there's no fish around. That happens, not because, excuse me, of anything they did wrong on the Pegasus. In fact, they did everything right. They worked their tails off, but they just didn't find any bluefin tuna. Now, once again, water temps are 8 degrees cooler this year than they were last year at this time. But with all these atmospheric rivers and all this nonsense going on, it's probably going to stay that way for a while. And I've talked about that El Nino that is going on around the equator. Up to the north of us, we have a strong La Nina that really should be over with, but it's continuing to force down cooler water. The cooler water edge was off Point Blanca last year, okay? And from that edge north, albacore were taken. That edge this year is down now below San Francisco, about 370 miles south of where it was. And man, that is very interesting. If that strong La Nina keeps pushing that water down, it's becoming more and more credible, believable at least, plausible that we could have an albacore bite. And we might just fit it in that window before that warm water shows up, and then we're into those typical kinds of years where you have wide open albacore. I imagine that we're going to have the bluefin right along with it. I don't see why those two would not mix together. They did in years past. And then followed by that warm El Nino. Now I'm dreaming, I realize, okay? But followed by that warm El Nino, it shoves the albacore out of here. The bluefin will hang in it. And then you get yellowfin and big eye and dorado. And man, it just looks like it could be an incredible year. And before all of that happens, because of the La Nina and the cooler water, we've had market squid everywhere, at all the islands, including Clemente and Catalina and Santa Barbara, San Nicolas and San Miguel and Santa Rosa and all the islands. And coastal regions have had squid. And that is just a magnet to attract more and more game fish. Halibut, white sea bass especially, yellowtail, man, this spring could be good. We just need this weather to lay down. And unfortunately, we're looking down the barrel of another little storm system that sounds like it will manifest itself here in Southern California on Wednesday and Thursday. Oh my God, is it ever going to end? In between that time, for example, the Monte Carlo's trying to get out this morning. You have plenty of time to get down there and jump on board. 10 a.m. trip, Brian Burrell will be entertaining you. Catch sculpin and whitefish, sheepshead, and maybe some sand or calico bass. Remember, rockfish currently closed here in Southern California. It opens next weekend. I'll give you the weather forecast on that in just a moment. But it's breezy offshore, but not so bad here along the beach. And that is really, really good news. So we'll have to watch that weather. I might as well jump ahead and tell you the rockfish opener in Southern California, the weather looks like it is going to be pristine. No wind. You should be able to go out, load up, give a shot. Like if you go to Clemente, say you're going to jump on the Amigo or the Thunderbird or your favorite boat, the Freedom. You go to Clemente, see if you can get a yellow bite, see if you can catch a sea bass, see if you can catch some halibut, calico bass, and then choom, right out and hammer on the rockfish. That is the best of both worlds. It sets up the perfect scenario. Now, Collinette is an area that has been really interesting in terms of yellowtail bite. For those of you not familiar with the geography, you start in San Diego, you drive south 120 miles, and you're off Punta Colonet. And that zone has produced some outstanding yellowtail action. The day after St. Patrick's Day, we had fabulous fishing down there as the Liberty had limits of yellowtail, and they're nice grade fish, 15 to 25 pound forkies down there, biting full speed on the yo-yo iron, fishing 50, 60 pound, wind on it fast, set the hook by turning the handle. It was really good. And then the Polaris Supreme goes in there after they caught 18 bluefin offshore. They were further down beyond San Martin Island, so down there about $1.50, $1.60 from Point Loma. They roll back up there and they hammered out 120 of those yellowtails. So those forkies seem like they are there and ready to chew. And it was Mike McDaniels on this podcast the day before that predicted a wide open yellow bite at Colonet. So that's pretty good shooting. It's like, as I said the other day, Babe Ruth pointing at the center field fence and then knocking the ball over the fence. That's about what Mike did with that prediction. So that's an area we're watching. Now, out of Ensenada, we're also seeing offshore a lot of bonita. Really good bonita fishing. Sometimes, a lot of times it's that oceanic bonita, but we do catch bonita when we're albacore fishing sometimes, or they're in the same area. They like the same feed. They love chovy, and that certainly gives a little food for thought. Also, lots of rockfish. Rockfish season has been open this entire time in Mexico, so that is not a problem at all. Now, add to it that yellow bite going on, some of these bonita offshore. There's good calico bass fishing around the Punta Banda area. Even though the water is very cool, you still can catch some calicos in there, and the rockfish bite's been pretty good. So we've got yellows at Colonet. That looks pretty good. We've got a little bit down there or up around the Soledad Bank area. And then we have some yellows, of course, down there around San Martin Island and the coastal regions 140 miles south. Coronado Islands, we've been seeing them, I think, and the guys on the San Diego here recently been saying that they see evidence of the yellows there, and they've had some good fishing at the Coronado Islands, up there 20-something yellows, and then other times slow, like 5 the other day. They feel like the conditions have suffered because of the wind, because of the rain, and we just need a stretch of springtime weather without the wind to get that rolling along. That was a yo-yo iron bite also. It was very, very good on dropper loop with a sardine down on the bottom. Those fish are deep in the wintertime, and I know now chronologically we're into spring, but remember I told you that water is 8 degrees cooler, so it's more of a wintertime vibe for the fish, and they stay deep until that water warms up, and then they'll start to move up the water column, and then you'll see them boiling around. Then they start eating the surface iron instead of the yo-yo iron, and then it really gets good and gets exciting, no doubt about that. So here locally, from the border, I'm talking San Diego now, out to Santa Barbara, sheep's head, whitefish, sculpin, with some pretty good bass fishing. You want to fish that fluorocarbon on the bass, and I like that Opsin Fluoro. 40 pound works great. It's resistant to the abrasion that is going to be part of wintertime bass fishing because they are on, or in, I should say, structure. They're in a sunken ship, or they're in around pinnacles or some kind of debris, or like Iser's Reef, a man-made reef like that. They are in bad neighborhoods, so you've got to pull hard when you get a bite and move them away from that structure, or you are sawed off and you are history in a hurry. So we've got that going on. And then as we look ahead to the Rockfish opener next weekend, man, it is looking good. And I know it's ways off and weather can change, especially the longer the range, the forecast, the more that can go wrong. But right now, that is looking really, really good. The Amigo has a trip Friday night, so they'll be going for the Rockfish opener. And Chef Jason, of course, Jason Lawler, you know Jason, he's been on our show a million times. He did a bunch of our cooking videos. He's going to be the chef on board that one. So let's get the Amigo out, go catch some rockfish, and Jason is going to cook one heck of a meal for you. He's a great chef. He loves to fish. That should be a lot of fun. All right, I better get back to work around here, man. I've got a lot to do. Got to get ready for our Patreon luncheon at 12 noon, pulled pork sandwiches. You'll be mingling with the crews of the boats here, Mike Morrison, the manager, and the rest of the great staff here at 22nd Street Landing. It should be a lot of fun and a great day. You guys are the life's blood of Friedman Adventures. Thank you for being a Patreon member. Hey, and thanks for all your help in sending all of those goods south of the border to our brothers and sisters in Mexico. Here at 22nd Street Landing, they facilitated that whole thing. They allowed me to just plug this place full of clothing and medical supplies. And I know sometimes it was a hassle, but nobody ever complained. Everybody was on board with it, and I thank them so very much. And I thank all of you who brought goods and clothing and so much more down. And all of you who have gone and donated some money to help us with the shipping. I really appreciate that. We have a GoFundMe, and that will help us to defray those costs. All right, everybody, have a great Sunday. It is always great for me to start my day with you. I wish I had some coffee. That's where I'm headed right after this, but I will toast you. And if I don't see you this afternoon, I hope to see you really, really soon. Take care, my friends.